Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about probably the most headline grabbing Senate election of the 2026 midterms, which is the United States Senate, the Texas Senate election in 2026. And the reason why it's so, Texas, as we know, is a very Republican state. And the election or the senator who's up for re-election is John Cornyn, who's been in office since 2002. So he's really popular, or he's been really popular if he's been able to win since 2002. So, but the problem is that he is getting a primary challenge from Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who he is much more conservative than Cornyn is, and he's challenging Cornyn to a primary. And the other candidate is Wesley Hunt, who is a congressman who's also breaking from party leadership and is challenging John Cornyn. And the main thing about this, it's really more of a two-way race between John Cornyn and Ken Paxton. John Cornyn has been attacking Paxton because he's had a lot of legal troubles. Let me show you. I think it was in, maybe not. I thought it would show you. But he's had a lot of issues with legal troubles. He has a lot of fraud charges against him, and he was even almost impeached by the Republican-controlled Texas House, though he was acquitted by the Senate. Now, he has been attacking Cornyn because he believes that Cornyn's not conservative enough. And polls, really, John Cornyn has the main edge when it comes to endorsements, because he's the establishment Republican. Paxton does not have a lot of endorsements, neither does Wesley Hunt. In the fundraising, Cornyn is out fundraising Paxton by double what Paxton has, with $8 million compared to Paxton's $4 million. And polling shows, the thing was that polling was, earlier on in this race, showed Paxton was going to have a lot more support. But now Cornyn is starting to really pick up speed or get some momentum, mainly because people are worried that if Paxton's elected, then he'll have a really bad shot at winning the general election. But this race is definitely going to go into runoff. If you didn't know, Texas has a runoff system where if one candidate does not get more than 50% of the vote, then there will be a runoff between the two highest vote getters. So it's a good chance that John Cornyn and Ken Paxton are going to be the main opponents in this race. All right, moving on to the Democratic primary. This is actually a very interesting primary as well because it's very competitive. Now, initially, the main two candidates that were running was James Tallarico, a state senator from Texas, and Colin Allred, who was a U.S. representative, former U.S. representative. He dropped out, though. And Tallarico has really been getting a lot of momentum, mainly because he is a, let me make sure I have this right. He is a Presbyterian seminarian, and that's really going to help him because Texas, as we know, very conservative, very religious. But the big problem is that a candidate who has much more, has a much higher profile than him is Jasmine Crockett. Jasmine Crockett is a U.S. representative from Texas, and she's probably one of the most high-profile members of the U.S. House. And they're in a very heated primary. So far, Jasmine Crockett has some endorsements. Tallarico, though, has a very, very popular on a lot of the Texas legislature. Now, looking at the polling, so far the polling has shown that Crockett is actually leading over Tallarico, and actually it looks like so far, if she if the election was held today, or the primary, then it wouldn't go into a runoff and she would just win. And that's a really big problem because James Tallarico is by far the more electable candidate than Jasmine Crockett. I don't think Jasmine Crockett is a bad candidate. I think she's definitely a rising star in the Democratic Party. Very good at attacking Trump. But the problem is that Texas voted for Trump by 14 points in last November. So if you're gonna, even if Trump's really unpopular, it's gonna be really hard to sell that your main claim to your big claim to fame is that you have been attacking Trump and that Trump has been attacking you. Tallarico, though, has a much more relaxed, has been more focusing on how he's attacking Republicans for not being Christian. As you know, I made a YouTube short about that, and how he's one of my favorite Democrats right now. So I definitely think he's the better choice. But the big problem is that Jasmine Crockett has a much higher profile, and also she's because she's a black woman, that really helps with the in the South, because the Democratic base is very black. And there's, of course, I'm not going to say there's anything wrong with that, but that really gives Jasmine Crockett a huge advantage over James Tallarico. And in the general election, right now it's likely, as we can see some polling, if it was Jasmine Crockett versus John Cornyn is winning by 8 or 6 points, and even with Ken Paxton 8 points, 2 points, with Wesley Hunt is 5. Now looking at Tallarico, we've got for Cornyn it's 6, we've got 3, we've got another 6, but then with Paxton, it's 1, 3, and even tied. So I think that really shows you that Tallarico is the much more electable candidate. Now, I think even if Tallarico does win the primary and Paxton wins the primary, it's still going to be very hard for Democrats to win. Republicans just have such a huge advantage in this race. But I think if James Tallarico wins the primary and Ken Paxton wins his primary, then Democrats could have a very good chance. So if you want me to cover any other Senate elections or any governor or House elections, leave in the comments below. Thanks for watching.